Hi, boys and girls. Today I'm going to read you a Curious George story called Plants a Seed. I thought this was really good timing since we've been talking a lot about plants together as well. So let's see what happens with George when he plants a seed. Here we go. Jumpy Squirrel was very busy. George was curious. What was Jumpy doing? Can you see Jumpy? What do you think he might be doing? Let's see. Bill, the boy next door, told George, Jumpy buries acorns and nuts. He stores them in the ground. He can dig them up later when he is hungry. That gave George a great idea. George buried the orange juice. He buried the butter. He buried the bread. He was glad to find a good place to store food. Boys and girls, is that a good idea or a bad idea? Are those things stored in the ground, like orange juice and bread and butter? They're not going to stay very good in the ground. Let's see what happens. When the man with the yellow hat came home, the kitchen was empty. Where was all their food? Oh dear. George proudly showed his friend. George, orange juice and bread are not for burying, the man with the yellow hat said. They cannot be stored in the ground. His friend showed George a peanut with a sprout. George was puzzled. It means he was confused. This peanut grew into a plant, the man said. Seeds and nuts grow out of the ground, if they are not eaten first. George thought he understood. If a little peanut could become a big plant, what would a rubber band become? Oh, he's thinking maybe it will turn into a great big inner tube. Does that make sense? What would a feather become? He thinks if he plants the feather, that a bird will grow. Is that how things work? George dug lots of holes. He buried lots of things. Soon the house was empty. The man with the yellow hat was surprised. George, umbrellas and chairs are not for burying, the man with the yellow hat explained. They are made by people. They are not going to grow. Seeds and nuts will grow. Now the peanut grew a little plant because a peanut is a seed, but an umbrella is not a seed. A few days later, George saw something new in the yard. It was a sprout. See? Look, George, said his friend, a seed you buried is growing. I wonder what it will be. It looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Look really closely at that sprout. Let's see what happens. Oh, and by the way, I like that George is giving it some water. That's one of the things we know that plants need. They need water and soil, which it has because it's in the ground. And if it's outside, it's going to get the sunshine. Those are the three things plants need. Let's see what happened. Soon, there was a beautiful sunflower in the yard. George had a green thumb after all. Boy, I'm glad he figured out that you had to bury a seed in order to get a plant, not things you find in the house.